And we were planning to launch in January of next year, our air monitoring program, but then the gas leak happened, right? So there's a lot of urgency around getting real comprehensive testing done now. So I'm gonna pass it off to her. She's gonna tell you what we've done and what our plan is through the end of the year. And then if you could kind of elaborate on the benzene fact sheet that we put together based on what we saw from AQMD's results.
Give it up for Jessica. Hi everyone. Again, my name is Jessica Hendricks. I work with an organization called Global Community Monitor. And we are an international human rights and environmental justice organization that partners with communities that live on the fence line of heavy industry, whether that's an oil storage facility, a gas storage facility, people living next to chemical plants, steel mills, things like that. And we teach them how to take their own air samples and then use that as an organizing tool. And when I talk about taking our own air samples, you know, I'm really talking about taking them for toxics, you know, benzene, hydrogen sulfide. Next to steel mills, you might find lead. And I think we need to know what those chemicals are and in what quantities, right? We can kind of get a big level of metals, but what percentage is lead? You know, we can get a lot of VOCs and methane and mercaptan, but what part of that is benzene? You know, what about hydrogen sulfide and other sulfurs? Those are much more dangerous than methane, especially when we're talking about human health. So I think there's a couple things that are right to know, as well as informed decision making, right? If people understand the risks that they might be faced with, they can then take the steps to make a more informed decision for their health and the health of their families. So as Alex mentioned, we were contacted back in March, I think, February, March, by Alex and Save Porter Ranch to do some monitoring in the Porter Ranch area. We kind of developed the project a little bit. We're working on fundraising. Samples can be pretty expensive, to be honest with you. So we're working on some fundraising, trying to build it out into a broader statewide project. And then the gas leak happened. So it was kind of springing into action immediately to get some samples here to, you know, check the air district monitoring and check the other monitoring that is available, the data sets, compare our data with their data, and see kind of where things go from there. So this morning, we got up very early to get out to Porter Ranch to collect 2 air samples. We collected them, I think, by where Hillary was collecting the footage. We were down on Sesson, right at the Highlands entrance this morning around 7:30 and then 8 o'clock. What we're looking for is those odors, right? How many people have smelled the odors late at night, early in the morning? So those are associated with chemicals, right? And people say they're associated with methane and mercaptans, and that may be true. Those are also associated with those chemicals, but they could also be associated with hydrogen sulfide and some other sulfurs, as well as benzene. And we weren't really getting the data on that, so we wanted to collect our own air samples when and where we experienced pollution. When our eyes started burning, our throats got sore, when we could smell those odors, that's when we wanted to take the air sample. So we collected them in this bag. The projects are called bucket brigades. We've been, again, pretty active in Kern County in California over the past year, but it is international. I can demonstrate this for you all later when we kind of go through questions to make sure we have enough time. But basically it's a Tedlar bag inside here. So you suck the air out of the bucket to create negative pressure, and then you open the valve on the top so that the ambient air can rush into the bag. When I say ambient air, that's just the air that's all around us right now. So the air can rush into the bag. Then we're going to send the bag off to the lab for analysis. Lucky for us, the lab is in Simi Valley, so Matt has agreed to drive it off tomorrow so that we can get it in within holding time. So these samples are going to be analyzed for 70 VOCs. Those are volatile organic compounds. So those are things like benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, as well as 20 sulfurs, so hydrogen sulfide, carbon disulfide, things like that. And as Rex Harrison and folks mentioned about the SUMA canisters, the stainless steel, you know, there are some questions over how well they retain sulfurs and how well they can detect sulfurs. The Tedlar bag is pretty good at picking up those sulfurs. So we'll get that, especially by getting it to the lab as soon as possible. So we're going to get a much broader range than what the Air District's monitoring for. We did, kind of in the past few weeks, take a pretty hard look at the Air District's results, what AQMD is doing some monitoring for. And they're monitoring for the common things, BTEX, right? So BTEX is very common around oil and gas facilities. It's benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylenes. Those are really common around oil and gas facilities, including refineries, pipelines, wells, storage tanks. So they're monitoring for those four that are common. We're going to expand that to be much more. However, in looking at these air results that we did get from the Air District, they have, you know, elevated levels of some of these chemicals, right? We all know methane's in the air. We can see it with the Flir camera. We can smell the mercaptans, you know, and they're telling us that it's just the mercaptans they're smelling. There's no long-term health effects here. Well, what the Air District is actually finding in their sampling is that there is benzene in the air in elevated levels, right? Benzene is a known carcinogen. And I want to be really honest with everyone that, you know, we are finding them in low levels, but the levels that we're finding could be associated with an increased risk for cancer if associated with very long-term exposure, right? So we talk about acute exposure, and that's something like the hydrogen sulfide that was brought up before in very high levels of part per million. That's acute exposure. You're going to get, you know, dizzy, sore throat, nauseous very quickly. The long-term exposure, you know, is chronic, and that's generally associated with about a year or more. And then when we talk about very long-term, that's usually 10 years to a lifetime. So I think the air sampling data raises a lot of questions of, you know, are these levels consistent? Did we pick up low levels here? Are they normally higher? And then how long have they been present, and how long are they going to be present? You know, before we can really make adequate decisions based on kind of our health and the health of our families. But what we do know is that there is benzene coming off that facility into the community. We found it in the samples at the elementary schools, at the community school. I think this is something that the Air District, as well as SoCal Gas, the health department, folks need to address, because there are long-term health effects associated with benzene. So we need to kind of do more exploration on that, more air samples. We also need real-time air data, because what we're getting back from the Air District, you know, is after public records request from back in October. So, you know, if we do find really high levels of benzene back then, it's too late to really make that decision. So we need real-time data, and we need very high-caliber equipment that can do that and can release that publicly to everyone so that folks can make informed decisions and do that, you know, on their own time. We're not waiting for the police to come door to door. We're able to, you know, smell something, log on, and check it. So that's what one of the ideas here with collecting our own air samples is to use this as an indicator. Use this as, you know, an organizing tool so that we can write a fact sheet, write a press release, lobby elected officials with that data, and urge them to get out and do their own monitoring. We don't want people to come out just when we're complaining about odors. We want comprehensive air monitoring 24 hours a day until the leak is over. And that's what we're hoping to achieve with some of this monitoring. So we took 2 samples. We're expecting the results back by Friday, and then hopefully next week we can really launch this messaging forward with the buckets, and then revisit this early next year to figure out kind of where we are with the campaign and what makes the most sense in collecting more samples, what's the plan, what's the budget, and how can we fit that into Safe Porter Ranch's strategic goals, as well as address folks' concerns from the broader community. So that's kind of the broad overview. Do folks have questions? Yeah, there's a lot. Okay, I think you were first.
Are there any recent readings on the hydrogen sulfide, which people have mentioned a few times earlier?
You know, I think that's a really great question. I heard Rex Paris mention some levels of hydrogen sulfide, and I did want to follow up with him on kind of where he got that data. What I'm finding from the Air District and the other data that I've seen, there is no sulfurs in that data. But again, I have some big questions about the equipment's ability to capture sulfurs. Okay, back there.
Any elevated radon gas levels? Have you found that?
Radon.
No, the Air District hasn't tested for radon, so we don't have any reading on radon. I mean, I think that they should be testing for a lot of things. Okay, back here and then right here.
Do you guys know how far the airborne, chemicals have reached? Do you guys know anything about that?
Granada Hills and Chatsworth is what we've heard. And it might go further, but we just don't really know. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
Right, I think,
Yeah. Beautiful.
I think a lot of this is going to depend on the wind patterns. It's pretty windy in Porter Ranch, as well as kind of how far they're blowing, how quickly they're blowing, and then just really sampling, stepping out further. So, then you?
2 nights ago when I called and I smelled gas, I talked with the inspector from AQMD, and she told me that AQMD is in the process of putting up permanent 24/7 monitoring stations throughout Porter Ranch. She didn't know where. I said, I hope you're looking at where the most calls are coming in. I don't know what kind of testing, if she's going to use the stainless steel or something. Have you guys been aware of that, and that they're doing that, and are they really doing it?
That's the problem, is that it evolves every day. Something new comes forward. So thank you for letting us know, and we will definitely follow up on Monday. Yeah.
I think you're next.
Tested the water for any chemicals, because we don't give our dogs tap water anymore, but they used to be like good.
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I think that's also really insightful to recognize. We have not done any water sampling, and my organization specializes in air. We could explore those possibilities further. You know, if it's in the environment, it's hard to just retain it in one element, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, so should we only be worrying about gases we can smell? Because, I mean, it seems like there's the potential for an awful lot of chemicals, like even if you're not smelling it. You know, I mean, all of these things have different specific ways. All of them fall to the ground faster. Some of them carry farther. Some of them react differently with other things that might be going on in your environment. I mean, we need to be concerned more with just beyond just what we can smell, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think your nose is really sensitive to chemicals, but there's a catch here, is that at certain levels, you can't smell anything anymore. And that's why you'll often find people that work in oil refineries or factories say, oh, I don't smell it, and it's called olfactory fatigue. They can't smell anymore. And there's certain levels of chemicals, like hydrogen sulfide, we've talked about that for a while. It's really dangerous after about 100 parts per million because you can't smell, so you have no idea how much you're being exposed to. So I think there's a couple things. There's things that you can't smell, there's things that are dangerous in levels that you can't smell, and then there's just kind of the fatigue of your nose of not being able to smell the danger after a certain while. So absolutely, I think we need to be testing for those.
I have a question for the new relief well that they're drilling for now. Is that going to expose us to more chemicals?
The 12 new wells, you said?
Then
The relief well.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think anytime they drill into the earth, they use chemicals, they use equipment that pulls things up and that expose us to more potentially chemicals and toxins.
Mm-hmm. And then I think just to add on to that too is, you know, I'm talking about VOCs and sulfurs, those are gases. But I think, you know, with kind of increased drilling activity and increased activity on the well site, you're going to see an increase in particulate pollution. First, diesel from the diesel-powered engines, the trucks coming up there, the drilling mechanism, and then you're going to see all of that dust being kicked up in the air. So you're just going to see elevated levels of particulate matter.
Why are we getting the oil smell mixed in with the gas smell? We smell that all the time. Is it it's coming out of that well that used to be an oil well? I asked the AQMD guy last night, what is that? I smell, oh, and you know what he said to me too? when he smelled the gas up at my house last night at 11:30, he said, well, that's natural gas. And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, yeah, that's what we're talking about here, right? And he goes, but it's natural gas. It's the kind of gas that you light your stove with. And I'm like, well, yeah. And he's a guy that's been working for them for 8 years. So it's kind of scary.
Right, we hear stuff about that with volatile organic compounds. They're organic. It's natural. Same with the stove. Nobody is like huffing your stove. Like, that's not smart. None of this is necessarily safe. We just need to figure out what that level is. Okay, one more.
You said you found levels of benzene at the schools. Do you remember the parts per million exactly off the top of your head?
So we didn't do the testing. The AIR district did the testing. AQMD did the testing.
Okay.
And they did monitor down to parts per billion, which is just even smaller. I don't have the figures on me now,
okay.
But we're pulling something together, hopefully to release this week to folks. You know, so it is an increased level of benzene, and that is associated with an increased risk of cancer. But we're looking at long-term, very long-term effects here. So it looks like some of the levels that we found might be associated with an increased risk of cancer, but is that 1 in 100,000 increased risk, 1 in a million? And it's tricky because there's no levels of acute exposure for benzene, right? It's known to cause dizziness, confusion, sore throat, respiratory issues, but there's no like documented health effects of, you know, at this part per billion, you know, you're gonna have huge respiratory problems, or this can cause heart attacks. There's not that level for benzene. We're looking at kind of very long-term exposure. So it's really hard. When we say an increased risk in cancer, you know, we're talking about 1 in a million increased risk, 1 in 100,000 of increased risk over a lifetime of exposure. So there's a lot of unknowns. What we do know is that it's below the OSHA standard, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration
For children?
Well, OSHA doesn't have a standard for children. And that's the problem with comparing to OSHA standards, is because OSHA is taking these standards and applying them to middle-aged, generally men, that are generally healthy and only exposed to these for 40 hours a work week. So when we're talking about community health, it's really inappropriate to apply OSHA standards on a community health because you're talking about elderly folks, children, pregnant women, 24/7. Pets. So it's really hard to kind of compare OSHA standards to these levels.
I don't mean to interrupt like that, but a lot of people are asking, hey, did we test for this? Did we test for that? Did we map the plume? Can we get the Flir camera into somebody's backyard? All this stuff takes money. Flir camera, I didn't even know it's a $100,000 camera. Jeez. So up till now, say Porter Ranch, and today was our very first authorized expense to get these 2 air samples. Everything we've done is done on 0 budget so far. And so we are asking for donations to do what we do. I see the jar going around, and that's awesome. You can also write a check. We're working on the online version, but because we're a nonprofit, there's a lot of red tape with that. So for one thing, if you do care to donate some money and you want it to be tax deductible for sure, make a check out to Food and Water Watch. They are our fiscal sponsor. It will be tax deductible. If you want to make it directly to Save Porter Ranch, at some point we should have our tax deductible status approved. That's with the IRS, and that's down the road somewhere. But there's your choices. Everything you're asking for, we'd love to be able to just do everything. We need the money. Thank you.
Question. I'm looking at the Save Porter Ranch website right now. There's no address to send the donation to.
It should be there.
Well, I'll fix that.
Okay, we'll fix it. Thank you so much. But what's the PO box?
There's Rinaldi address.
Or no. What is it?
19360 Rinaldi. 19360 Rinaldi.
Can you post this over there?
We'll post it on the website.
Yeah, so we
Let's
can
do that.
forward to more people.
Yeah.
And also about the Tuesday's meeting, do you have information posted on the website as well? So we can forward to more people.
Yes, we will, but in the meantime, we do have a Facebook event page, so please please like please like Safe Porter Ranch on Facebook. Also like Food and Water Watch California on Facebook too, to find out all the other great work we do with communities in California. And yeah, if you can, please write a check. A check for $100 would be great. A check for $50 would be great. To give you an overview of this air monitoring program, it costs $7,500. All in all, we want to do really thorough air sampling, so please help us get there. We've raised some funds so far, that's why we can pay for some sampling right now. But it's very important that we continue doing air sampling through the leak if necessary, but also after the leak. So when things go back to normal, what does that really mean? Is the AQMD actually going to stick around and keep doing air monitoring? Not so sure yet. So that's why it's very important that we continue to do community-led monitoring after the leak stops, after things go back to normal. So please consider making a donation. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. You said that other towns, other cities have in place other ways of getting power and gas that are non-toxic and not harmful. Has Safe Porter Ranch looked into those cities so we can emulate them and bring that here? Because that's what you do when some city's doing good. You go and you look at how come and how do we do it.
Right, so I totally agree with you. We have to address the problem, but we also have to address the solution and make sure that's coming online too. So yes, Safe Porter Ranch and Food and Water Watch will be working together. We're reaching out to groups like the CR Club. They have a campaign for 100% clean energy. There's so many other groups working on this, so we're looking to build a big coalition to make this happen. Absolutely, and we're looking elsewhere at other people who are doing it. Yes, and then you, and then you.
So everybody's moving out the Porter Ranch and finding other housing options. What's going to happen to our area? It's going to be like a ghost house? Now we're just all our money in the bank. And just like, we don't know what's going to happen. And we're just like, how are we going to sell our houses? We have houses and all the properties that we have in the houses, you know, all kind of different stuff that we have to worry about. It's not just that.
I know, it's totally crazy, and that's why the police are trying to do more patrols. Like, we don't know, right, what's going to happen. And so it's very important that we continue to come together and stay organized so that we can work on it as it comes along, because like I can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. This thing changes every day, and we're constantly adapting to what's going on, right? So I can't tell you, but it's very important that we keep looking out for it, yeah.
I have a question. Jimmy Cho, their VP of like operations up there at SoCal Gas, he has said a couple of times that it's going to take them between 3 and 4 months to potentially fix that leak. Here's my question. I don't know if you know this, but he also stated that they can't work on it during the wind.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any, for people that are doing relocations, you know, we all know as Porter Ranch residents, we just started the windy season. Exactly. The windy season goes through to April or May now. So here's my question. So he says it's going to take 3 or 4 months to fix it. Is that like real time? If I had no wind at all, was it going to take me 3 or 4 months to fix it? See what I'm saying? Is that, are you getting that from him, that it's taking 3 or 4 months to fix it?
With the wind included and factored in?
No, I'm getting the impression it's no wind. I'm getting no wind. And so then you can add the 5 months onto it. So you're really talking about 8 or 9 months.
Yeah.
If they don't work on the windy days, because our wind really hasn't started yet.
Right.
I mean, it's getting ready to pick up.
Right, and so I totally agree with you. We don't know, they make it up as they go, but one thing I can tell you is that Mitchie Flinder, the other thing that he did was he asked for a community action committee, or community advisory committee. Right, so that's going to have SoCal Gas at the table, but it's also going to have all these other neighborhood groups like PRNC, HOAs, school boards, PTAs, and Safe Porter Ranch. Originally we were excluded, but thank you for those of you who emailed and said Safe Porter Ranch needs to be at the table. We got it, so Matt will be at the table. That's important. That's important because that's where we'll get the daily updates, we hope, on what's actually going on. So because this committee is forming, they'll be hopefully passing information on and we'll be able to keep track of them better, but honestly, I think they are just making it up as they go.
So potentially we're really
potentially it could be going
months.
Way longer. Yeah. We just don't know.
Could be a year.
We just don't know. We just don't know. Could be. Yes.
Do I understand our tap water is at risk? that we shouldn't be drinking our tap water?
If you feel that way, then don't drink your tap water. I'm not totally sure.
That's why I'm asking. Who's in charge of the water?
DWP manages the water. Call DWP. Get them involved. Drag them into the fight. Absolutely. Other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about. I'd like to talk a minute about the video that captured with that camera, because that is potentially the most powerful piece of
media.
You know, I don't want to call it propaganda because it's not propaganda; it's real. But that has an impact immediately on people.
Right.
We can look. Scientists can look light years away in the sky with spectroscopes, spectrometers, and discern what chemicals and what properties are of planets and stars.
Right.
Why can't we do this from 600 feet or 1,000 feet? You know, and maybe the camera can't do it. But my point is that video is more powerful than almost anything we've said here today. We need to use that.
Alex, isn't a lot of the video going to be on Tuesday night?
Yes. So here's the plan for the video.
I know she said she can't tell what's in it, but we need to know what's in it.
So here's the plan with that, and I totally agree it's the most powerful part that we've seen, and I was really excited that we could show it to you today. So we have a press plan where we're going to be putting out a press release on this and getting this out to every single station. You guys saw us on Rachel Maddow, right? So that's just the beginning of us getting serious national coverage of this. We're going to be calling everybody saying, hey, put this on your TV. So this action that we have on the 12th is going to be even more powerful. When we start getting this footage out there, our action is going to get even more coverage, so make sure you wear red.
They'll be asking you for that.
Oh yeah, they will. We're going to send it out to every outlet. We're going to make sure that the world knows this is happening, because it is an international issue, right? It's a climate change issue, just like it is a local public health issue.
Okay, other questions, my friends? You all questioned out?
This storage tank under the quarter inch. Someone told me that there's a storage tank under the quarter inch going for that.
The question was, is there a storage tank under the quarter? Does the storage facility go under the... So again, the boundaries of the storage facility underground are unknown.